Steve.
I'll say something to the online audience first. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, 3, 2.
We gotta go do this, quick, Alex.
Action.
Okay, just a brief announcement to all those wonderful people who have been supporting us online. We know you're there. We can't see you. You can see us. And we have wonderful techies here who tell us there's a couple of hundred of you out there watching us now. So A, thank you, and B, if you want to access all of the stuff we've done, if you've only just joined us and you want to access all of the stuff we've done in this last week, and you're a member of our online community, there's a link underneath this video where you can sign up and get all the videos, and of course there's a fee, of course, but you're welcome. Thank you. Now, both Kayvan and Rick have asked me in the last couple of minutes, what are we going to talk about in this workshop? I've gone, I don't know. This is the end of the event. I mean, I'm pretty numb.
I'm not, and I've never needed a subject to talk for an hour, so I'm good. You pick the subject.
No. I'm so pleased that Alex is sat between us. This has been a phenomenal event. It's been so good. It's just wildly exceeded my expectations. And I suppose now we better do what it says in the programme, and that's talk a little bit about the future. Although I love living in the moment. But there is a future, and we need to do, not project it, but chat about the possibilities. I mean, I'm personally going for massive body surgery, and I'm going to get down to 7 stone again by next week. You know.
And he's going to lose a few inches of height also.
I was waiting for that one, yeah. But we're heading into some pretty crazy times. And it is going to get intense. And there will be further moments of madness in the world, especially in the coming year and a half, because it's going to get desperate in certain ways. And there'll be so much outrage and rancor, and everyone will go, but you should be doing this, and you should be doing that. And just, come on, you're astrologers, don't buy into the hype and spin. Keep the centre ground inside yourselves, and just realise that this will pass, and there will be a solution at the end of it where we're all going to be a lot more content. That's the beauty of being an astrologer, I think. We can see when the intensity will stop. And I think that's going to be around mid-26, mid-late 26. What do you think? What do you guys think?
Well, I'm looking forward to Saturn moving into Aries. Because I think we were in this sort of, I was talking this morning in my lecture about, this sort of feeling of being lost when it comes to disciplining our children and holding on to a sense of reality. We're kind of in a dream world with Saturn and Pisces. But now we're coming into the harsh reality of Saturn and Aries. And I think for the school systems, I think we should be encouraging more independent learning. So it's not quite so prescribed that we are allowing children to develop their own independent research projects, self-monitor a bit better. And we also have Jupiter moving into Cancer, another cardinal sign. And personally, I've always found Jupiter and Cancer a bit of a challenge. It's because they're so emotionally connected. You have to teach Jupiter and Saturn to care about what they're learning about. So, I'm looking forward to this cardinal stage of learning, where things are going to move a little bit faster.
My turn?
Your turn. Thank you for waiting for once.
When I was about 26 years old and
back
was
in the 1700s.
Back in, right, back when we had hand crank computers. I was standing around with a bunch of guys who were about 20, 30 years older than I am, and someone said something to me that was kind of like a put down, and I kind of got angry, and one of the guys there said, Levine, if you're going to continue to dish it out the way you do, you better learn to take it. It was very wise words. First of all, I just want to give my sincere thanks to my younger, smarter metaphysical brother, Steve, who kind of approached me, well, not quite a year ago and said, what do you think? And I said, yes, before I even heard the whole story.
He did.
And then shift happened. And so thank you for your fortitude and courage and seeing this as a vision and holding on to it and putting it together and involving us, Penny and Alex and me and all of you, and Nick and all of you. And that same trip, when Steve and I got together last August, September, I bumped into Nick at the AA, at the Astrology Association of Great Britain, at their conference. And he said, what are you doing after the conference? I said, I'm going down to Sussex to hang out with Steve Judd. Do you know him? And he said, oh, you mean the gatekeeper? Because Steve was instrumental in Nick's success in the academic world, because he was the person, and he may not shout this, but he was the person that made the move from Bath Spa to Lampeter possible. I don't believe I'm exaggerating that story, am I? Yeah. So thank you, Steve, for that. As far as the future goes, I mean, we'll recycle around again in a bit, and I'll have more to say. But I do think that by the time that these ongoing sextiles and trines are done between Uranus and Pluto, with the sextiles from Neptune, and Jupiter will come into the mix there when it moves into Leo, and in July 19th of 2026, we'll have Jupiter at 4 degrees of Leo, and Uranus at 4 degrees of Gemini, and Neptune at 4 degrees of Aries, and Pluto at 4 degrees of Aquarius. And into that, on the 19th of July, the moon will sweep through. It enters Libra, and it will be at 4 degrees of Libra, and we'll have the 4 outermost planets and the moon all making five out of 6 points on a Solomon seal or a 6-pointed star. And I really believe that won't be the turning point, but that will be the point of no return. By that time, and by the 5th and final Uranus-Pluto trine, by the time we reach 28, 29, it'll be done. Whatever it is that happened here, we'll begin to see what it was that happened here. And until then, we have to maintain awareness and activity on whatever level we can, because by the time we get through that phase, there will be no going back. In the United States, there's a tribe of native and indigenous peoples, First Nation peoples, American Indians. And as you may know, the story about why Indians are called Indians is a bullshit story. Columbus did not think that he was in India and therefore named them Indians. He spoke, Italian. He wasn't very good in Spanish, even though he was funded by the Spanish. And the Indios were considered to be children of God. And it had nothing to do with, as a matter of fact, India wasn't called India then, so it's kind of crazy that, but one of the American Indian tribes in the Southwest are the Hopi tribe, and they're particularly known for their prophetic visions and their elders who have basically spoke about this time that's coming. And a number of years ago, the Hopi elders got together and made a statement that said, for years, we've been talking about these times of great change where the rivers will run swift. That time has now arrived. The rivers are running swift. And this is a paraphrase, not a direct quote of what they said. The rivers are running swiftly, and those who out of fear try to hold on to the bank will be torn asunder. Push away from the bank and out into the middle and flow with the go. Keep your head above water. Look around you and see who's there. This is your new family. Be joyous. There's only one thing to do now, and that is to acknowledge your community, to know where your food comes from, and to keep your head above water. That's where we are right now. Those who hold on to the past, those who are trying to make anything great as it was in the past, is suffering from trying to hold on to the banks. You know, the fear of the unknown of what's around the bend in the river is great. But those of us who do astrology have something to hold on to. My now dearly departed astrological buddy, partner in crime, Jeff Jower, who passed from this plane, geez, just a little over 10 years ago now. Jeff used to say that, I remember having dinner once with Alois Trindle, this is about 15 years ago, you know, the PhD physicist behind Astro-Dienst or Astro.com. And Jeff was telling Alois that the astrologers have what he called the Full Employment Act. And the Astrological Full Employment Act, Alois is looking at him and he goes, what the hell are you talking about? And Jeff said, well, you know, those planets, they keep going round, whether we're here or not, whether we're looking at them or not. As long as they're moving around, consciousness continues to evolve. And so those people who fear that we're at the end, we are, but there's no such thing as an end in a circle, in cycles. And we are not at the end, we are at an end, and it's a major end. But with the understanding of the Astrological Full Employment Act, the planets are going to keep going round. You know, the Earth is not in danger. Maybe humanity is because of our fear and our stupidity, maybe. But this is not the end. And as long as we keep one eye off into that distant future and one eye into where our foot's hitting the ground on the next step we take, we'll be as okay as we can be. So that's my opening comments.
And I would also suggest we keep our third eye on the immediate future. Because, as you're all no doubt aware, the astrology of the last 8 weeks has been absolutely batshit crazy. It's only just emerging from a radical period of intensity and concentration, which is half the reason I put this conference on these dates, because I was suspecting that the last couple of months would have been so crazy that we needed something like this to make sense of it, which isn't that far out, actually. But viewing that from a purely astrological perspective, this last couple of months has been like the battering ram that's opened the floodgates. There are at least 3 more times this year where there's going to be trouble, potentially. June the 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th, Mercury and Jupiter at 0 Cancer, Saturn and Neptune at 0 Aries. August 7th, 8th, 9th, I forget if it's a new moon or full moon, with Mars at 0 degrees of Libra, opposite Saturn and Neptune. And September the 21st, a near total eclipse of the Sun at 29 Virgo, opposite Saturn and Neptune. These are trigger dates. They're not going to have the intensity of the last, or at least the longevity of the last couple of months, but they will have a degree of short, sharp intensity. So you need to not let yourself get sucked into the hype and spin of these times, because there's going to be more moral outrage, you can be sure. I haven't even looked into 2026 yet, apart from a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. I'm too busy living this year. So not a good time to go and suddenly, I don't know, go into the centre of a big city and stand there with a placard or something like that. I made a deal with my partner that a few weeks ago I said I was going to get really bonkers around the end of March. Let's go on holiday for a week. So we ran away to the wilds of North Yorkshire where there were no humans and lots of springs, and had a wonderful recharge. And just be careful around those dates because they might get a little bit messy, just a little bit. And seeing as they're not stopping me,
We're not encouraging you either, just to be clear.
I would particularly suggest that June 7th, 8th, 9th period with Mercury conjunct Jupiter square Saturn conjunct Neptune is not a good time for financial speculation, risk or chance taking. Jupiter square Saturn is very much around the markets, the stocks, the shares, the businesses, the big money, and it could get quite heated. It could go very much up and down at that time. So unless you're a really good gambler, don't speculate at that time.
Could you repeat those dates? Please.
Repeat the dates.
7th, 8th, 9th of June. That's when Mercury lands on top of Jupiter.
You know, I think it's also important to look at these changes as they're unfolding, understanding the fact that in a circle or a cycle, even though we have an arbitrary beginning mark at 0 degrees of Aries, of course, which is where the Saturn-Neptune conjunction will occur, but there really is no beginning and ending to cycles. And when we try to say what's going on now with reference to what went on before, we often use a planetary conjunction as a beginning of a cycle, like a new moon being the beginning of whatever the next lunar cycle is. And we look at that, and we are actually in the midst of playing out two particular cycles, more than that, because it's like standing in the ocean when the tide's coming up or down. You might stand in the ocean for a moment and feel the waves against you and feel like the tide's coming in, but the undertow is stronger and it's really going out. The astrology is always rhythms within rhythms within rhythms. And one of the primary rhythms, maybe the deepest rhythm that we're playing in right now, is the new moon cycle. And I say new moon, it's really the new Uranus cycle, meaning the Uranus-Pluto conjunction that occurred in the mid-1960s. And when the question was asked earlier about psychedelics and the role of that, like Steve, I'm a few years older than Steve, but I was there and I do remember everything about it. And yes, there may have been various substances involved that had to do with unlearning what I thought I knew and opening up the filters of my brain that allowed me to perceive things that may have taken, months or years of practice. Not that one might not be able to get there, but it was pretty instantaneous for a lot of people during that period of time. But the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in 1965, 66, 64, 65, 66, that really impacted the entire 60s, was a seed period for the squares between Uranus and Pluto in the 2010s, but 2012 to 2015, when they moved in and out of exact square 7 times over the 3 years. And a lot of the things that came up in the 1960s, including the second wave of feminism, including protesting on the streets, anti-war, civil rights, corporate stuff, plant chemistry and the use of it for individual consciousness growth, ecological issues. All of these things were all of a sudden back on the streets again and in our mind. Not that they ever went away completely, but it was a very dynamic period of time with the Arab Spring, with Occupy this and that. I mean, just the amount of changes and that led to the next point which was the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And the Saturn-Pluto cycle has its own magic to it that is, I call it the waltz time of civilization, because Saturn and Pluto make that, in effect, new moon. Here it's a new Saturn to Pluto 3 times a century. So it's almost like this is like a Straussian waltz that every 100 years goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. In the 20th century, it was World War I, spring or midsummer of 1914. Then the next conjunction was 1947, and then the next conjunction was 1982. And in each of those periods of time, there were extreme changes, and then the oppositions actually made it more like 1 and 2 and 3 and, where you had the oppositions of 1931 with Hitler coming to power and Mussolini and the Depression in the United States and the Japanese invasion of China in 1931, and then the opposition again in mid-60s, the Israeli-Arab conflict coming to another round of head, and to the American war in Vietnam and so on, and then the bombing of the World Trade Tower. But this is another cycle that we are going to get another phase on after this whole thing ends by 2028, I think, is when that the next square of that occurs. And then we have the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction cycle, which, is the decades. They were conjunct in 1900, 1920, 40, 60, 80, 2000. It was actually early 2001. And right now we're at the midpoint, going from the 2020 great conjunction where they changed elements, and we're dealing with the square, which is what Steve was referencing as we're coming to June, to the third and final Jupiter-Saturn square as a major transition. So we're in the midst of these huge tidal changes that are really going to take time to sort out, to figure out exactly what happened. Because when you're in the midst of something, whether it's your personal Saturn return, it's this event, then that, and then should I do this, and all these decisions. 20 years later, you look back at it and you go, oh yeah, that was the year I got married. Or, oh yeah, that was when I changed job. We look at things from a distance, they become a point. But when we're in the middle of them, as we are now, you don't get to see what it really is. You get fragmented by every push and pull possible, and I think I've rambled enough for now. Someone else.
I just want to say, it has been, just moving away from, I just want to come back to the moment. And, I just want to thank Steve and Rick for being such good friends. And all of you that were here live, I really felt, very close to a lot of you. And so much energy and love, and, I hate to get all gushy, but it's just been a magical event. And, I'm sitting up here after eating too many profiteroles.
I thought there were vitamin pills.
And I'm just feeling very satisfied. Like intellectually, like I feel like, we've had so many great conversations. Yes, we got fed well, but it's been a magical event. And so I just wanted to, to pause and say thank you to you. Emotionally, I feel quite spent. So I'm ready to kind of decompress. I think, yeah, that is the right word.
That's a good word.
Decompress. And I wish you all safe journeys home. Before you get into your cars or before you get on the train, take a few moments just to ground yourselves, please. And even you guys watching online, be careful, because your mind is full, and just be a little bit mindful that you're being safe, please.
And I would like to add to that. There's been a couple of times, and one of them was the lunch we've all just had, where I just sort of stopped and looked around. And I saw so many people who had never met each other before, who would never normally meet each other, from so many different countries and cultures, just chatting away. So many friendships. I said at the very start of this event, welcome home, you found your tribe. That was a true forecast, because this is a tribe now. And we're not going to lose this now, because most of you have signed up for the WhatsApp group. So there's going to be a regular ongoing interaction, and this is something which is only going to grow over the coming period of time. But to actually see these people, you people, interacting the way we have, it's been as big, if not bigger, than the astrology for me, because it's all about the idea of community growing and interacting with each other. And to the people watching online, I'm so grateful that you're there, because some of the questions you've had from the online people have been brilliant. And to know that you're there, even though you can't actually be in the room with us, has been a big support. Seriously, so thank you. But next year, make sure you're in the room, if we do it next year. If.
When?
If.
When?
I'm going to gang up on you too. When?
Careful, or I'll hand all the organisation off to you two. Nothing has been agreed, nothing has been signed, possibilities have been postulated. I've talked with people informally. The dates are being held by the hotel in case we decide to do it for a few weeks. But nothing will be decided for at least a month, because I need to sleep. And I need to seriously decompress from this, think about what we've done, and I need to see if I've actually lost money. I don't think I have. But if I have, then it's going to, I don't know what will happen. So, yeah, but if I have lost money, it hasn't been a lot. I thought I was going to lose about £40,000. But actually, if I have lost, it's only going to be not a lot. So, well, that means I have to put the prices up next year, if it happens. But the first event is always the most difficult. Next year, if it were to happen again, all the structures are in place, we know what we're doing, it'll be much easier. And if it happens next year, oh, shut the fuck up. In the remote possibility. Will you give me a break? Let's just assume everyone here will be the first ones to know, and there will be early bird offers, reservations, if. If.
Well, I've been
We'll
thinking
see.
about some new places we can visit on the next tour.
Leadenhall Market, where the old forum used to be.
I got lots of ideas.
Fiji.
Some of us missed the tour.
Barry might have recovered by then in the astrology shop.
Yeah, we did. I said that on the first night. We did 17,000 steps on our astrological tour. But I have places we need to see, other places. We're going to have some fun.
Or Zanzibar, as
When
I've been
we
telling
do it.
Steve. Or Zanzibar, as I've been trying to convince Steve to do one in.
What did he say?
What's he saying?
What's he saying?
Zanzibar.
Zanzibar.
Or Zanzibar, doing one in Zanzibar, as I've been trying to convince Steve.
No, I still can't hear him. No.
He said we. Oh, never mind.
Amadown's happening next year, because that's agreed. But the people who went there will get first tickets. But that's going to be early March next year. But everyone, you'll all get an email or some type of communication letting you know, and you will all get first dibs. That'll happen. And there's bound to be something happening somewhere. Zanzibar.
I thought you couldn't hear.
Well, I'd say that I'm too old to go travelling around the world, but this guy's about to go and hit about 15 global capitals in the next 3 weeks. Come on, give us the list.
Well, from here I'm flying to Lisbon, training up to Porto, flying to Barcelona, then to Stockholm, and then to Prague, and then down to Rome, and then up to Milan, and then to Copenhagen, and then back to Steve's house for dinner.
That's the truth. Yeah, that's the truth. And that's in what, 4 weeks, 5 weeks?
5 weeks.
Yeah.
Tonight,
Whereas by then, I'll be sleeping in my place.
And I'll wake him up. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, tonight I am collecting my former college roommate. So it's part of my Saturn return festivities. And we are also going to Porto for the conference. to
Yes,
see
we'll
Rick.
see.
So I'm really looking forward to, reliving some memories and reflecting as part of my second Saturn return festivities.
And this will be your fourth and
My fourth time in
my
Portugal.
third time at the
Portugal.
International Portuguese Conference.
A couple years ago, we were in the Azores, and that was
A lot of fun.
amazing.
Yeah.
Whereas tonight,
We've got a quick.
We're
I'll be-
here.
I'll be in the bar. And for those of you who are staying tonight, please come down to the bar just for a little celebration. I know it won't be many of you, but for those of you that are staying tonight, please come. You'll be most welcome, or everyone. There's only going to be about, I believe there's only 19 of us. That's the latest figure I've got, but hey.
Last night there were that many of us still in the bar at 2:30 in the morning.
No, there weren't, because I closed the bar at 2 a.m. after the night before when certain individuals stayed up very, very late. and I'm the gatekeeper and the headmaster of this one. So.
Yes, sir, Mr. Saturn.
We've got a quick question here.
Yeah,
Thank you all for this event.
speak up.
I said thank you all for this event, and I wanted to know if you could each maybe say briefly if there were any, if you could have put a pause button on the weekends and had time to reflect on your presentations or the topics or how things unfolded, if there were any topics that you wish you could have stuffed into one of your presentations, like something that you missed and might just tell us what those little bits were that got left behind.
I was very intrigued by Amanda's, she was talking about William and conception charts, because I had done quite a lot of work with the Frankenstein stuff and about creating artificial life in a petri dish. I wish I could have, had a bit more time to explore that topic a bit more. But, maybe in the future, I could look into that.
On that note, I have to be very careful the way I phrase this. I have helped a number of women get pregnant.
And does Teresa know?
She does. By telling them the best time to go for IVF. Okay? Because it does work.
Yeah.
It does work.
The technique that you use, is it solunar angles amongst other things, or?
To be honest, the main way I do it is twofold. One, I look for obviously good Jupiter-Moon links at the time. But secondly, I use this, what's it, Stanislav? No, not Stanislav, Lord. Jonas, the Jonas.
Yeah, Dr. Jonas. So that's the solunar angle.
Sun-Moon angle.
Yeah,
because it works.
Yeah.
It works.
Yes.
Yeah.
There is a strong school of thought, and it has been proven statistically to
Yes,
work
it
to
has.
99% plus, that when the sun and moon in the sky are in the same angle with each other as they were at the moment of a woman's birth, then that is when she is much more likely to be able to conceive. And and of course it also helps if their monthly cycles are in tune with that, which will happen on average once or twice a year. But if you want to conceive, go for it when the sun and moon in the sky are in the same angle as they were when at the moment you were born. And if you don't want to conceive, be careful.
And
that time.
that technique actually goes back to work by Johannes Kepler, who had this concept called recurrent transits, that when a planet makes the same angle as it is in your natal chart, in reality, regardless of whether it's making an exact aspect with any planet in your chart. For example, you take the angular distance between Mars and the Sun in your birth chart, and when Mars and the Sun make that same angle in the sky, that's resonating or reactivating your chart. An astrologer, Robert Blaschke, wrote a book called Holographic Transits that right now is going through a republishing by Revelor Press, that's Jen Zart's company in the United States. And I just wrote a foreword to that book, so I'm very familiar with that technique, but it does go back to Kepler.
Okay, I did not know that.
Recurrent or holographic transits.
I do have this big, thick book on the history of Kepler, and it's taken me a couple of years to get past into the second chapter. But, one day.
And of course, all three of my children are Aries, and I'm a Cancer sun. So in my case, it was the birthday shag.
In answer to the question back there about what topic, it was not something that was on my schedule to talk about, but if this conference happens again, one of the topics that I would really like to pursue from a consciousness, physics, and how does this mechanism really work would be the concept of what we call reincarnation. I think there's another whole layer of what's going on there that most people do not understand or address. And it would be something that I would love to explore with you guys out loud.
And actually, I'd like to turn it around a bit, as opposed to what would I like to do in the future. I'd rather turn it around and say, what have I actually really liked doing here? Because the astrocartography was great, but that's what I do. And the medical astrology was great because I love doing that stuff, and it's relatively experimental, but it's nice to be able to put my work into the public domain. And the talk I did this morning was great, but it was something that I've been looking forward to because it was kind of a little bit magical, and it was me ranting basically, but I managed to hold it together. But on Saturday night, after Alex, Nick Campion, Penny Thornton and Rick Levine, I went and did the comedy, the Astrology of Humour. And in retrospect, after that, that was the best thing I did. Not just because it made everyone laugh, but because it brought humour in after some really heavy-duty but excellent astrological workshops. And we needed that humour after the intensity of the day.
Yeah.
So that was the bit I was most happy with. Although the standing ovation was rather nice. Thank you. I've never had a standing ovation before. It was just, whoa. Question. I just realised I sucked my thumb in front of the world on live.
I think I just confessed to having a birthday shag.
3 of them.
I haven't confessed to anything yet.
But we've got the photos.
Thank you all very much. It's been really
Speak up.
amazing. Can you hear me?
Almost.
Yeah, it's right. I'm kissing the microphone, so maybe they can turn it up. So one of the things that struck me was that Alex talking about being the only astrologer in a school, and I was the only astrology person in psychoanalytical training. Then I've talked to people who are in banking, and they're the only person. And it made me think, maybe we're like little plants, little consciousness plants, because it's quite often being the only one in a kind of a completely outside environment. But other than that, I just wanted to ask, maybe there's people in terms of the what next. I'm wondering if there are people in the room that have got ideas of what next, and if there's ideas from the community or the tribe in terms of that line of thinking that you proposed.
I would say that if your analogy of a little plant is relevant, then in the last 3 days we've all had a big dose of super intense multi-strength organic fertilizer.
I completely agree, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you all very much.
But open to suggestions for stuff in the future, yes. But it's not something we can just turn on like that. Well, we could, but it wouldn't be real. It has to be something we're passionate about, that we're actually feeling, because you can't just do astrology like that. You've got to feel it inside yourself. You've got to flow with it. It's got to feel good. Otherwise you're just reading the books and reading the script. You know, so this is it. As I said at the start of this, it's a mixture of psychology, mathematics, geometry, and intuition. And it's a mixture of science and art. And there is no swing either way. If you can't bring the magic into it, then it's not going to work.
You know, in the human brain, there's the right hand is connected to the left hemisphere, and the left hand to the right hemisphere. the left hemisphere is logical, rational, scientific thinking. The right hemisphere, the feminine, the yin, the left hand, which of course, as we know in Latin is sinistra, and the sinisterness and the judgment of the right brain, left hand by the patriarchy. If you can use both hands, the word is ambidextrous, dexter, right hand. Doesn't mean both hands, it means two right hands. Well, astrology, I believe, is the corpus callosum, which actually is the highway between the nerve bundle that connects the right and left brain. And if there's a magic of astrology, it is connecting the science and the art, is connecting the art and the craft, the time and the space, the yin, yang, whatever the opposites are. That's the magic that astrology brings to this, is that it's neither this nor that, it's this and that. It's both this and that.
Absolutely. And just on that point, I know this is a bit left field, but for 900,000 years at least, humanity developed from a hominid into a short, squat being with a very large single lobal brain up until about 50,000 years ago, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, within 20,000 years, which is only about 300, 400 generations, we shot up by 1.5 feet, and our brains split into two. We became bilobal. This doesn't happen in nature that fast. So it points to some type of sudden accelerant in evolution at that
Aliens. I didn't say anything.
I'm so glad I'm sitting between you two.
There are certain, for example, Rupert Sheldrake postulates that might have been mushrooms, or the sudden development of eating large amounts of meat, protein.
Terence postulates the same, except he assumes that the mushrooms came from a distant star as a form of intelligence.
He does indeed. And he also said that when the mushroom Logos spoke to him in one of his trances, he said, look, we got it perfect. We've worked out the best way for intergalactic travel.
Yeah.
It's just single cell, microcosmic, small mushroom particles, and then we found this beautiful blue pearl, and we thought, oh great, this is paradise.
We took over.
And then the monkeys grew up. So they made an agreement with the monkeys that if I gave the monkeys intelligence, the monkeys would help the mushrooms go back into space. And I've heard worse theories. We'll see.
So I have the mic. I have a couple of questions.
Speak up.
Oh, sure. Yeah, is that good?
Yeah.
So my first question is, how do you see astrology evolving with regards to the more discoveries that are made, like with the Kuiper Belt objects and the more asteroids, and is it going to be shifting from the traditional or just the inclusion, or I just wondered what your
we're going to
thoughts
have
were.
a big argument about this one.
We are, but I'm going to be right. Go for it, Steve.
Here, I'm going to break my normal rules and be traditionalist. I have a rule of thumb that says that objects in space, in general, don't have an astrological effect unless they are round. Things like Chiron, as far as we know, Ceres and Pluto are round, whereas all of the asteroids bar Ceres, Sedna, Eris, are potato-shaped. They haven't formed enough gravity to become circular. So to me, that doesn't count. Now that's a personal opinion, and it may be that Rick thinks I'm wrong. I doubt it very much, but you never know. And I'd be interested to hear what Alex thinks on this as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about, when William Herschel interrupted his own music lesson to look up in the sky with his handmade telescope, itself an act of invention. And he spotted something rather like a comet. and how that changed how we view the universe. It suddenly was limitless. But Uranus was the first and the only and the last object to be discovered by a human. Everything else was discovered by, Neptune was discovered by mathematical calculations. Pluto was discovered by photographic plates. And the others, I couldn't even tell you. Space telescopes. But I think there is something very, very, very special about Uranus. Always the butt of astrology jokes. In that...
The butt of astrology?
Yes. It sure is.
I knew that would have to come in sometime, yeah.
And it gives off methane gas as well, apparently. But it's interesting hearing about the smaller objects out in space, and it's interesting to give them names and give them mythology. But I'm a little bit, because their orbits are so long, or their orbits are elliptic. I just think I doubt their effect. It's just maybe it's embedded in the mythology that it permeates our consciousness, which maybe makes them valid in their own way. But I just think it's something different aside from Uranus, if you see what I'm getting at. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there.
Well, and I think that my odds are really good because it's 2 against 1, and my vote's going to be bigger than theirs. I take the complete opposite point of view, and I believe that to shirk from the now known fact that locality is an illusion, and that distance is an illusion, that space actually is not what we think it is, and that everything is connected to everything, like the ancient Hindu tradition of Indra's net, where the universe or the cosmos was a net of pearls, and in every single pearl it reflected the totality of every other pearl in the net. And I believe very firmly, it's a religious belief of mine, substantiated by quantum physics, that everything is connected to everything. And although there are only about 20,000 named asteroids out there, when one looks at one's chart and sees what asteroids with crazy names are conjunct various planets in their chart, the stories, although anecdotal, are absolutely mind-boggling. The fastest example I can think of out of my head is that when Bill Clinton was running for president, he played saxophone. He only played the saxophone in public once, and it was on a nighttime talk show, the Arsenio Hall talk show, and that night the asteroid named Sax was conjunct his natal sun. Now that doesn't prove anything, it's just everything is connected to everything, and I think Steve's judgment of potatoes versus marbles, I understand, is his, and it works for him. And I think that in astrology it's really important, if you have something that works for you, whether you can rationalize it or make sense out of it or not, it doesn't matter, because the universe is plastic, and I don't mean artificial, I mean moldable, malleable, and what it is that we believe actually will come back to us by what it appears to be out there. And there are people who use techniques that I think are just crazy, but they use them, and they work. And I use techniques that you might think are crazy, and they work for me. So don't let anyone ever talk you out of the techniques that you're using, except I think that to shirk from the fact that everything is connected to everything is a bit, to me, it lacks something. I'll ease off. And that's not a judgment of these guys. It's just my position is very, very different. I feel like it's incumbent upon me, and I've done some explorations, and I'm still at the beginning of this, but I'm working my way through the 8 newly discovered Kuiper Belt objects, including Eris, which I now look in every chart that I do. And it's overwhelming as to what it is that it gives me in information, and Sedna and Maki Maki and Varuna and Gong Gong and all these alien things that we don't know about. And so I encourage encourage you to do your own explorations and to arbitrarily draw your line of what works for you or not, wherever it is that you feel fit. You know, do it.
I think that's a really good point. But do you remember when I was doing my talk on Algol? Oh, maybe you don't remember because you were late. And I was looking at Prince Harry's chart, and I was saying, you know, the temptation was to find some connection to Algol.
I was there for that.
And I said, you know, maybe there's a midpoint, maybe there's an asteroid, maybe there's something conjunct Algol that I could have added to that chart to strengthen my own argument. So, you know, I like what you say very much, that, you know, location is just an illusion. But, you know, I also think that, you know, if you're going to study something, study it thoroughly. If you're going to study Maki, well, then get in there and look not just at one chart or the chance chart, but look at it across different, you know, just because, and I like what you said, because I understand this.
And in support of what you just said, just to be, you know, intellectually honest, I've had this conversation with Rob Hand over the years, and Rob refers to the 20,000 named asteroids as space gravel. So there is another point to this, but I think also this is part of where...
You're interrupting me. Sorry, I'm not finished.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
And then I'm in.
So what I was just saying is, you know, if you're going to study an asteroid, a bit of space gravel, you know, make sure that you understand it. You know, add depth of meaning to it. Compare it across a variety of charts, not just one. And I like what you said about Bill Clinton playing the sax, because I understand that too. There's an incident and you get all excited and think, oh wow, there's this connection. But it's arbitrary. It seems to be chance. So it has to be, sorry, there's a bit too much of a researcher in me. It has to be replicated across a variety of charts to find meaning in it, I think.
I agree with you. I think this is where computers will ultimately teach us things that we don't see, because the number of possible patterns out there are beyond the human ability to look at a chart with 20,000 points. And I think that will be able to separate out some of these anecdotal stories from things that have value, and it may take years or decades for that to occur, but I agree with you.
Right, so I'm going to disagree with all three of you.
That includes you?
That includes me, because I've got lots of Gemini.
So do I. So there's 5 of us up here.
Because
at least
there is an asteroid called Eros, which is potato-shaped, knobbly, and Eros is what really turns you on. Okay? I have Eros exactly 1 minute of 1 degree conjunct my Mercury and my midheaven, and I am turned on by words. I am a wordsmith. So, and Eros is potato-shaped, so I'm contradicting what I said earlier. But there are certain asteroids, such as Eros, the asteroid Lilith, as opposed to the hypothetical dark moon Lilith.
Well, it's not hypothetical, it's an actual point. Like the node.
No, it's not. It's a mathematically worked out point.
Like the node. Like the node. So the node's hypothetical also.
But if you're going to go down there, you're going to start talking about Vulcan.
No, I'm not,
Lilith.
though. But Lilith and the node are in common in as much as they are both what the Hindus might call shadow planets. We can't perceive them. There's nothing that we can see with the node, but it is an exact, accurate point. As is Black Moon Lilith. It's simply the apogee of the ecliptic, or of the moon's orbit around the Earth. That's all it is, whether you use it or not. It's not an imaginary point. It's a real mathematical point.
Well, I'm just going to choose to... I'm not going to disagree with the mathematics of what you say, because you're right.
And I respect your desire or your inclination not to use it. We all draw arbitrary lines. We have to. In other words, the ego creates boundary, and without doing that, and any line that I create or Steve or anyone creates as to what we use or don't use is ultimately arbitrary, but we have to do that as humans. I totally respect that.
It's nothing like being, like feeling at home on the playground.
But what's really good is this idea of how the asteroids get their name, because once you get asteroids like Lilith, Icarus, Eros, and then you start applying those archetypes and you land in your chart, you think, yeah, that is where I take risks. That is where I fly too close to the sun. That is where I get irrationally angry. And yet, before we knew of these asteroids, we wouldn't be thinking of these archetypes.
And there is power in naming something.
And And before we named Uranus, which may be the one planet we named wrong, because Uranus is more, as Rick Tarnas suggests, Prometheus than Uranus, but we still have figured out what it actually does and how it actually works, even though the defining words around Uranus are more Promethean than sky goddish or Uranian.
Some people still call it George.
Or Herschel.
Or Herschel.
Thank you. And I just had one more question. I have more, but I'll just go with just one more, if I may.
That apparently was a good one. It got us going for a bit.
Let's see where this next one goes. Last night in your talk, Rick, you mentioned endarkenment, and I was wondering if you would be willing to expand on that with regards to how that can support the individual evolutionary journey, and on the bigger picture, these revolutionary times that we're in, and what your thoughts are in moving towards or transcending.
Well, just in a few words, the word endarkenment to describe what history calls enlightenment is not my word, that's Rob Hand's word. So I'm just, echoing his value judgment on what we considered to be this amazing awakening was actually, although there were certainly great things that came from enlightenment, from the emphasis, of the right hand, left brain, the scientific, analytical, observable reality, the sciences that came from that were all incredibly important. But at the same time, it shut down the left hand, right brain, soulful, perceptive, feminine, artistic, emotional side of it. And it might be what, Freud or Jung would call, the shadow work, the trans-Saturnian, work of doing the dark side of Saturn or the outer planets or Pluto. And that's really where magic occurs. I mean, that's my short answer.
Like the alchemy.
So, has anyone else got any comments or questions they'd like to make? One there. Hold on.
All three of you are fabulous, and your philosophy.
Speak a little louder if you could.
Especially the fabulous part.
Yeah. And hold the microphone close.
Yeah, when you say fabulous, hold it really close.
It'll be in my mouth in a minute. Look, you're three fantastic astrologers. What I'm guessing, though, at this bit, is if you give a philosopher enough pen and paper, they can prove any theory. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm listening to all three of you, and you're all proving your theories, so you're all right. Mm-hmm. That's it.
Thank you.
Fair comment.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I know. I'd just like to speak on behalf of many people that were here, many people online. I know there's a lot of people out there that have dreamt of getting you two guys together. So thank you for that. And as for your talk on education, Alex, I think it blew everybody away, and I'm going to re-listen to that over and over. This has just been so wonderful, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's time for the thank yous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you stand up,
Thank you.
Can we go home now?
Before you stand up, Antonio and I also organised something for us to be able to say thank you. So if you'd like to step to the side just for a moment, please.
Bastard.
Uh-oh.
I told you we were going to be set up.
Help you up, dear.
Well, thank you, youngster. Near Saturn returner.
Sorry.
It's one thing to know that the 22nd of July is Mary Magdalene's feast day, but what are you going to do with that?
So what happens is, before birth, each soul chooses a life. The lives are actually shown to the soul, and then the soul chooses, and then the soul incarnates to the planetary spheres, and then it forgets that it chose the life.
With this 9th of August envelope and consciousness shift, how could this play out in our earthly 3D existence? What does Penny think about how this would play out for us?
Well, that's going to depend on your natal chart, really, isn't it? Does any of this configuration actually connect with anything in your natal chart? If it does, then it's going to have an impact and a meaning for you.
Is that the corner that we're going to turn? And once we turn that corner, will it become clearer where we are?
There's lots of corners on the map.
The easiest answer would be to say yes and leave it at that. But the planets impel, they don't compel. That's one of the oldest dictums in astrology. Could have been a lot worse. Could have been. We do need to thank some other people, seriously though. We've done most of the thank yous. There's a couple of people, there's 3 groups of people we missed out. Antonio. He's incredibly shy, so it's embarrassing to help. I particularly want to thank the hotel and the hotel staff and the people who did the food here.
Unbelievable.
Spectacular. And I want to thank all of you. I particularly want to thank these 2 wonderful people, because without all of you, without Kayvan, Antonia, Teresa, and especially these 2, this couldn't have happened. And I know I did a lot of it as well, but, you know, these 2 and me, we thank you. Thank you, man. Thank you, bro. Take a bow.
Take a bow?
Take a bow. We will see you all again, maybe next year.
If.
Yes.
When?
That was fun. I hope you don't have lipstick on your face. Oh, you do.